Okay, hello, welcome back, guys. In the background here is a mise en scène, which is the scenery behind, and usually what people do to try and set the scene, as it were, they will put stuff in there so you understand what they're talking about. Now, some people will sit behind a desk with papers to give an authority that they're giving you the news. Whereas what I'm doing is I cannot be bothered to set a scene. I can't be bothered to do the black screen. This is my boy's washing his shirts for school. Yeah, he wears military green as well. And my cats, yeah, because I'd have to do washing. Yeah, I'm just an independent man at the moment. Right, so a little backstory about me first. I lived in the Ukraine for a while, and I lived in Mariupol, which is in the Donetsk region. Okay, they may be key words for you at the moment. You might well understand that they are parts of the Ukraine and the eastern regions. Right, so I do have an understanding of what's going on in the Ukraine, which is not just fueled by mainstream narrative or the Western narrative. I can see both sides of it, and I wouldn't at the moment want to put too much of what I know out because I don't think it's relevant at all. Maybe in the future, but I will tell you a story. But I need to make you understand that during the revolution in 2014, there were certain right-wing elements that were used to force change. Okay, now what happened after they had a coup and a regime change? They then commandeered the army to go to the eastern regions of the Ukraine to convince them that they should be with the new Ukraine, which a lot of regions at the time, because they are Russian speakers, ethnic Russians, if you like, or Ukrainian Russian speakers, they weren't really in agreement with it and they were shocked. Donetsk and Lugansk, they decidedly said, no, we don't want this regime, we do not recognize it, and they obviously then started fighting, didn't they? Yeah, whereas other parts of the Ukraine were occupied. So how it is that maybe some people might see this as an invasion, whereas others in Ukraine might well see this as a liberation. Okay, well, at least 8 million people will see it out of 40 million people, I think it is, in that country. It's a bit of a shit show at the moment, and it's been a shit show for a long time. Now, there are certain right-wing elements in the Ukraine, which you may know about, you may not. Azov Battalion might be a word you know. They have certain ideological leanings. Now, there were certain right-wing groups, which is the Pravy sector, which were used in the Maidan to forcefully change things, okay? And there was a guy, and I need to relate this story to you. I think his name was, they called him Alexander Bely, okay, which is Alexander White, I think. I think his proper name was Alexander Muzhikov, something like that. Anyway, well, what he was a thug, basically, and he was a guy that was very forceful, very outspoken, and he was used to do certain jobs. When he started to get in the way of authority because he thought he was a hero figure, he was murdered. Okay, there's a lot of skullduggery that was going on at the time of the revolution. I don't know if you can dig into the internet and find out now, but it's not what it first seemed. It wasn't all flowers and roses. It was very violent. Okay, but I want to leave it there because the Muzhikov or Billy, he is an example for what I'm going to talk about now. Okay, now I do watch a few preppers. One of those is Canadian Prepper, who does in general get the picture over to you. I don't think he paid any attention to the revolution at the time, but now he's giving a fairly balanced view on what's happening there. Although when he talks about Russian separatists in the East, they're not Russian separatists. It's what you've got to understand. They're actually Ukrainians that may be, or what they are now, Russian supported. Okay, just like the part of the western part of Ukraine is Western supported, isn't it? You know, militarily, as we know anyway, because they've sent them heaps of outdated weapons, haven't they? Yeah. So yeah, I was quite impressed with that, and I've been watching Canadian Prepper for years, and he comes up with some good stuff, off the wall stuff, psychological stuff, and he did talk about a key thing. He was looking for the emotional states of how Putin is, and I agree that's a good way to look at it. I did notice Lavrov, who was the foreign minister, he was starting to get agitated by questions from certain media outlets from the West that were asking stupid questions, which he'd already had already said, and they just kept trying to wind him up, and you could see he was getting agitated. Yeah, but it's important to read people. Very, very important to read people. If you watch YouTube, for instance, for any length of time, you get a face, you get somebody with a mask, a bit like up there. You can see my Predator mask. Yeah, they put the mask on. They will give you their presentation. It isn't until there's a crisis and there's something happening that it starts to hype them up, that their real faces, or the mask drops and their real self starts to come through. Canadian Prepper, he's very much of a catastrophic mindset, which I understand because I am there myself, or I was. I do control what I think and how I react to things, and generally now I relax. I do a lot of stress relief through wearing masks and doing videos on my other channel. Yeah, but I have to spend time to work people out, whereas other people, I don't, okay? And it's vitally important, because when they're impairing information to you, you need to be able to trust them, whether it's on the internet or whether it is in real life, okay? Now, the second one I want to talk about is Jason, okay? That's the Angry Prepper. I don't know if you watch him. Now, I like him. I like him. He's sort of outspoken and he's easily wound up, okay? Now, he fits into my working environment quite well, because he's the type of guy you could go and prod just to get a reaction, and you will get a reaction, yeah? And an extended one at that. But what he was saying in the last video that I watched, which is about the situation in the Ukraine, I found his comments actually brought up some red flags, and now I understand exactly what he's like, okay? He's a warlord, all right? Now, what I didn't tell you about was the fact that in the Ukraine, during and after the revolution, the people who took over power labelled the people in the East as subhuman, yeah, and because they preferred to be with Russian influence, they were saying, this is the new government, they were saying, well, if you like Russia so much, why don't you go and move there, yeah, which is like, fuck off out of my country, I don't want you here. But it's not, it's their country as well, yeah. So Jason's saying near enough the same thing. If you like Putin so much and you're a Russian cocksucker, why don't you go and move over there? And I thought, right, okay, well, that's actually him. That's his mask has come off. Okay, you're a patriot, mate. Yeah, fair enough. Now, my evaluation, my real evaluation, he's a useful idiot at the end of the day, because he's, well, the way he talks about getting out of his car and punching somebody or having a fight, blah, 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 he's a warrior type of guy. He's got the physique for it and the mentality for it. And as I say, he's easily wound up. People do it on his live streams with flat earthers, for instance. He doesn't like flat earthers, therefore if you mention it, he will go into one. That's what we say in the UK, go into one. Yeah. Which makes him a warlord, because what he'd be doing is getting his clan together, and if you didn't agree with him, you wouldn't be staying, would you? Unless you could dominate him. He'd probably need a battering or two and some kind words to beef his ego up that he's doing the right thing, and then he could be manipulated into doing thuggish tasks for you. Yeah, you need people like that in a SHTF situation for defence and offence. Yeah, so as with the Ukrainian guy I was talking about, the right-wing man, Beley, Alexander Beley, he was useful up to a point, and when they'd had enough of him because he was getting too mouthy, they murdered him. Yeah, that is just, that's a reality. That is a wild reality. When the shit hits the fan, you're not looking at people who are going to form nice little flowery groups of gardeners. You're going to meet some really nasty people and some dominant people, and people that, if you can't control one way or another, they will take over, and then they will change the plans to what they want, which may not be beneficial to groups, yeah? And I've experienced this in my life. I don't want to talk about it, but yeah, you can end up ostracized and on your own because somebody with no intelligence has decided they're going to run a group, yeah? So this is how I evaluate people, and it takes time. Now, if Jason ever watches this, he might take it personally. I think he said that he's had a few takedown videos. It's not about takedown. This is what I do. I'm explaining what I do. I evaluate people, which is judging. Yes, you have to judge people. You have to evaluate it, and you have to get the skills very quickly to understand what you're dealing with people. Okay. As I always say, the best way to evaluate a person is put them in a stressful situation and see how they react, because that is them. Whereas in a more civil time, like, everybody puts a social mask on, don't they, to present the best side of them. But when the chips are down and there is pressure on, you will see the real person come out. So anyway, here endeth the lesson today. I don't know what you think of it. It doesn't make any difference to you. You don't know them. I just personally don't know the people that I watch on YouTube, but I do have a wary eye on what they have to say. As far as I'm concerned, when it comes down to being a prepper, I feel like I should be pulling away and disassociating myself from that sort of area right now, simply because I'm not identifying with their goals and aims, because it seems that they're just on an evangelist path and not being too realistic about it, because the conflict that is what it is at the moment is just a conflict. There have been conflicts all over the world. All nations have got blood on their hands because they've had to take out nations, whether it's just or not. And in this case, at the moment, the whole world is watching, and the Western world are going absolutely berserk about it, aren't they? Which is going to affect us because of the sanctions they put on. How it's going to affect us, whether it's price rises or other shortages, we will have to wait and see, won't we? But if you like, I'll give you another little story. Now, this was a Polish guy who worked with us, and he actually lodged in my house. It's a few years ago now. Now, this is not the first time that the Russians have had sanctions put on them. Peter came from Poland. It was an apple-growing region. When there were sanctions put on Russia, Russians stopped importing apples from that area. So the place that he worked in, he was a commercial vehicle technician. Turns out that the whole region just collapsed. So he had to go out and find a job. And this is simply because of political moves, which were unnecessary. It wrecked the whole region. So imagine what's going to happen with us. You don't know, do you? Wait and see. But that's what you need to prepare for, rather than preparing for World War III. If it is coming, that's a long way off. And I'm pretty sure that most of these political leaders are going to try and avoid this as much as possible, aren't they? Nobody wants to get burnt, do they? Or do they? Anyway, that's enough from me. If I waffled enough, I'll see you in the next video. All right? Take it easy.